after becoming a yoga teacher, getting into Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, all those things of the like, you start to become polytheistic and worshiping multiple different gods. And I started to learn all these other little, how you call it, like different magics and spells and spell crafting and occultic type stuff. And I would get into like Rosicrucianism and real alchemy and spell casting, like I said, and also like the deeper works of Freemasonry. And I actually started to like get involved with it. God bless you. God bless you. I'm here with Andy and Yvonne with Walking Testimonies, and I'm excited to be here today to give my testimony as we conquer him through the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimonies. Amen. So I'm going to start my testimony off from the very beginning so you have a good idea of my journey. If I had to put a title on this, I feel like it would be my seeking of truth, my seeking of the Lord, and how I went through many different facets of what life has to offer and what the flesh has to offer until finally coming to the fullness and the realization of the truth, which is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so when I was a young child, I had a close relationship with God. I'd always go to bed at night, I'd say my prayers, and we just have a chat, a one-on-one conversation. We always just talk it up. And around 12 years old, my cousin passed away. He was 13. He was like the closest thing I've ever had. And that moment I looked up into the sky and I started like accosting and scolding God. And at that specific moment, the relationship was cut, at least on my end, as I come to realize that it never was over on God's end. He always had his hand on my life. But from that time forward, it was a godless life for me. There was no praying, there was no worshiping, there was no care in the world about it whatsoever. And so, I lived the life of the flesh, lived the life of, godlessness. And so there was, the partying, the drinking, the drugs, the women, the reckless abandon, of getting into fights and just vandalism and all types of stuff like that. And my life continued in that direction till I was in my 20s, let's say early 20s. And then slowly this seeking for God started to begin. Now, it didn't begin with Christ. It didn't begin with what I know as the truth. It began with just like meditation and yoga, and I would like smoke a bunch of weed and start to meditate. And to me, that was me like seeking God. That was my spirituality for the time being. And so for the next couple of years, I would read like different forms of philosophy, get into yoga, meditate. I would do psychedelics, and that was sort of my seeking of God, right? But the relationship started to grow nonetheless. The seeking of him was there when it wasn't before. So praise God for at least that little portion. Mind you, at the time, that was truth to me. You couldn't tell me no otherwise. A Christian couldn't tell me, a Muslim, no one could tell me otherwise. That was my truth. This was me seeking God, and this was real to me. And so about 2015, I had a massive spiritual experience, which set me further into my relationship with God. But mind you, it still wasn't in part of the truth. And it's hard to explain that situation, but the only thing that I could tangibly relate it to was that I just wanted a deeper relationship with God. I wanted to be close to the sun, and not sun like sun in the sky, but the sun. And at that time, I didn't realize Jesus, because in Eastern philosophies, the sun and Christ-likeness was very generalized. It could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be Maitreya, it could be so many different things. But as we know, the truth is, there's only one thing. There's not a plethora of it. So for the time being, that's where I sat. I sat and became a yoga teacher. I still continued with different psychedelics. I was still seeking God, but again, like the focal point of this testimony is that the truth was absent. There was many different forms of God. There was many different forms of spirituality. There was many different forms of a false truth and a false sense of morals, ethics, and beliefs, but it wasn't hitting the mark. And I just thank God, despite all that, my heart would just, it was still focused on him. Despite all of it, I was like, I don't know what the truth is, God. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just seeking you despite all these other things that keep coming my way. And they sound very similar. They sound alike. It sounds like truth. It sounds real. It sounds like this is the way you need to go to better yourself, to better your life, to have a spiritual life, to have a meaningful life. It paints this picture of like this is the direction, right? But as we know that the path is very narrow, it's not as wide as this world deems it to be. And so my path led that way. Once again, seeking God, but all in the wrong places. And the seeking aspect even led me to becoming a Muslim. I was, in 2019, I had been away. Ironically enough, in 2018, I accepted Jesus Christ, which is very weird, because I come to this church. I had in 2018 thrown out all these posters, all these books, all these crystals, all these ideologies, and my friend told me about Jesus, which I had known about all along, but I had just, it's whatever, cast it to the side. Growing up Roman Catholic, having not the greatest spiritual family, so to speak. Like there wasn't like what it is now that I have with my actual dad. It was very weak. There was no praying, there's no going to church, there's no worship, there's no reading the word, there was none of that. So it was very weak, but there was still that background there, and it wasn't becoming suffice enough for where my heart was calling. And so, like I said, I accepted Jesus in 2018. My friend brought me to a church, never accepted Jesus like this before. I even got baptized in the backyard, and I thought I was, started to go into church regularly, started to read the word. It was like I was going down, what seemed like the right path. That was only for about a year. 2019 came around. I had went back to school. A part of this whole spiritual journey, I ended up dropping out. So I was missing 1 year left of school. I went back, and I was totally by myself, no friends, no nothing. So it was a very secluded environment, and I was able to like really start seeking intensely, because I was by myself. I didn't really have anything or anyone. I had a few friends here and there, but it wasn't like before. And ironically enough, what I became to realize is that when you get into the occult, when you get into the esoteric, when you get into the things of, let's say, the flesh, you are unknowingly always signing different agreements, different contracts, different covenants, and you don't even realize it, because they happen like this, and it's not happening in the physical, it's happening all in the spiritual. Every time you're breaking bread with somebody, every time you engage in a certain action, every time you read a certain book, doorways and portals are being opened. And I never realized the severity of it till 2019, and that's when the enemy really decided to attack me. And I would not wish this on anybody, an enemy or anything like this. It was awful. I had become a Muslim. I went to a masjid, saw an imam, went through the whole process, became a Muslim, started praying 5 times a day, reading the Quran, everything and the like. And I started to become spiritually attacked, like hardcore, where to the point that I felt like I needed to jump into this lake in order to please God. And if I didn't jump into the lake to please God, it was like I thought someone in my family was going to die. I thought, my life wasn't going to go any further and I'd be stagnant. And it was so real to me that like if anyone were to try to knock some sense into me, talk some sense, it wouldn't work. It was that real. The scariness of the situation was I would constantly go to the same place that I'd be asked to jump into the water. Now, to preface all this, the water I was being asked to jump into was, you couldn't see what was under it. What you could see was like rebar and different like heavy metals and pieces of metal sticking out. So you knew like this is a shady water, do not jump in it. But for whatever reason, this spirit or this sense that this attack kept telling me to do it. It was also prodding me on in like an Abraham sense with his son, being like, oh, go to go to the top of the mountain and sacrifice your son. And it was playing that in my head. It kept playing this attack where if you don't do it, you're not walking in your faith. You're not being like Abraham. You're not being a true Christian. You're not following Christ. God's asking you to do something and you don't trust him. And I would go to the same spot every day and cry because I couldn't bring myself to do it. Yet it felt so real to me that I couldn't escape it. And it was the scariest thing. No sleep. I tried taking a bus away from the area. Mind you, I was in Windsor where school was, and I live in Mississauga. And I couldn't leave. There was this lock and key where I'd stand in front of the train, eyes wide open, and I couldn't get on it. And years later, I understand that I was being spiritually attacked, but in the moment, I had no clue what was going on because I was still early in my faith. I was still trying to seek God, and I didn't know what else to do.
At that point in time, were you getting like suicidal? So those was like suicidal moments, like suicidal thoughts.
The irony is that I never wanted to kill myself. It's just I wanted to prove myself to God. So anyone on the outside looking in would think that I was. To fast track the story, I call it an angel, but the harbor master, so the person who like covers the whole riverside in Windsor, there's the Detroit River, Detroit on one side, Windsor on the other. The harbor master comes. Never seen a harbor master before, but apparently they were getting complaints because I was like going in and out of the water where I'd like dip my toe in or I'd go in like gently, but the whole prompting of this whispering spirit was you need to jump in. You need to have faith, jump in. Trust that nothing in there is going to hurt you. Despite me seeing like things sticking up and it was disgusting. And the guy comes and he tells me, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, it's a hot day. I'm trying to cool off. He's like, all right, well, cool. But like, do you know where you're jumping into? I'm like, it's the river. He's like, well, let me tell you. He's like, number one, this has a strong undertow. Like people die every year just getting pulled from the undertow. So number one, that's the biggest issue. Number two, all of this, well, not all, but most of the sewage in the area comes out of here. So fecal matter, anything from the toilet comes out from this one area. That's number two. And number three, people use this specific site to dump everything. They dump heavy metals, they dump cars, they dump metal barrels, they dump rebar, and they just dump like anything they could think of in there. So like glass could be there. This is not a spot you need to be jumping into. Like find somewhere else. This is very, very, very dangerous. And it finally like snapped me out of it. And coming out of it, finally realizing that that's not something God is ever going to task you into doing. And realizing that also it was a whispering spirit. It was a demonic impression that was trying to impart its will upon my life. Now, not being seated in God, not being rooted in God, and still having all those agreements, contracts, covenants, etc., from the past, it had full control over me. If I wanted to go somewhere, it wasn't happening. It had that much control over me. It was very scary. Now learning that we're able to cancel and cut all those things off and be protected, but having built up year after year after year of diving into the occult, diving into all these different things, the enemy says, oh, you want to become a Christian, you want to follow Jesus? Well, the enemy doesn't want that to happen. So it's going to put a task in front of me that is either A, going to seriously injure me, or it's going to kill me. Nothing good was going to come from jumping into where it asked me to jump into. And so that was one of the things that the enemy decided to sign off when I first became a Christian. So like letting everybody know that it's not going to be easy. The devil loves it when you're just chilling in the flesh and you're relaxing in his domain because he has nothing to worry about. He has you. He's got you in the palm of his hand, so he thinks, right? The Lord has you in the palm of his hand, and there's nothing the devil can do to take you out of it. Amen. So having come to that realization, you start to become more aware of the necessity of getting into the word, praying, and getting that relationship with Christ, not living in the flesh. Because at first you say, oh, it's just sin. Oh, someone's judging me. I'm doing something wrong. Oh, the word of God says that. But in the spirit, something's happening always. And the more and more you start to compile it, it's not good. It's not good, plain and simple. I feel like it's self-explanatory. And the second thing that the enemy asked me to do, I almost feel like I don't want to say it, but I feel that the Lord's prompted me to say it. But basically, what's the word? The ultimatum was that if I wasn't going to follow through with the second thing, that someone in my family was going to die as well. And again, it made it so real to me that I needed to follow through with this act. Again, you could not tell me otherwise. Don't worry, he'll be fine. No, like this person is going to die if I don't do this. And again, you're not going to further your career if you don't follow through with this. And it could be conspiracy, but people hear it in this through the celebrities who do all these weird different rituals and how their careers start to propel. I can almost create a testimony about that because at the time, I had just won a Supermodel Canada contest. I had no business being in the contest, I had no experience. I just prayed, Lord, if this is meant for you, then I already know it's a wrap. But if it's not, put me in last place. I want nothing to do with this. I ended up winning. This was in 2019, and it was around the same time all this was happening. So I was very confused with which direction to go, but this voice kept saying, you're not going to go anywhere if you don't do this. It was prompting like I needed to commit these acts and these like quote unquote rituals in order to further myself. And the second part was actually, it was a homosexual act. And again, like in my mind, that's something I needed to do. And I thought I even had to do, and that I was even going to enjoy it. And that's something that I liked. Coming out of that, I realized that this was all lies from the enemy. The devil is a liar. It was complete false. But in those moments, again, the agreements I have accumulated, the enemy's just like, let's sign off on these. Let's see what's going to happen from this person who's going to try to become a Christian. And
were those thoughts that were in your head? Was it someone speaking to you, telling you to do these things, or how did they really come about?
It was thoughts coming into my head, but I had gone so deep in this idea that I wanted to just better my relationship with God. Like it was to the point where I didn't even care, right? That's why I was doing psychedelics. I was seeking this religion. I was seeking that religion. I was going here. I was doing there. I was trying this, trying that, trying all these different things to try to seek the Lord, that prompted by an idea of something to further that relationship, that was enticing enough for me. And especially being in a place where it was very destitute. Despite, winning in 2019, I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this. I don't even know if I like this. I was still confused. I was lost, being outside of God's will. I felt that. I really felt that because I was like, what am I doing? Like, I just won this competition, but I really feel the same. I don't feel like I'm a part of what I'm supposed to be a part of. And so those thoughts just became like God was speaking to me. And I would have this conversation with it, but coming out of it, understanding that this wasn't God. This is not how God talks to you. This is not something God would ever task you to do. And first and foremost, all of it was going against God's word in the first place. But not being matured in faith enough, I didn't know any better. And to anyone who, when they feel depressed or when they feel alone, they seclude themselves, I would warn heavily against that, because had I been with someone, right, who had been a part of the faith, had I been with a friend who was a part of the church, I feel like it would have been a different story. Easier said than done, but in hindsight, I feel like that would have helped, because throughout all those moments, I was alone. And I chose to be alone too. I wanted the seclusion. I didn't want to be around anyone. And that's what the enemy wanted. There was no fellowship with believers. I wasn't yoking up with anyone that I needed to yoke up with to help with obviously Jesus will do this, but to help with the bondage and the yoke that I had created over all the years. Obviously Jesus is the one that is the breaker of those things, but definitely fellowshipping and saturating yourself with like-minded people who are followers and worshipers of Christ is going to help you 10 times out of 10, right? As opposed to just being by yourself, unless the Spirit leads you. Anyways, from that moment on, it got close. For both acts, I was literally like footsteps away from doing both acts, committing both things, both jumping into the water and committing a homosexual act, both. I'm like footsteps away. I'm treading the line. And I can honestly tell you that despite me, I don't want to say doing everything wrong, but despite me just being fully immersed into these things, God was right there. God's hand was right there. The enemy didn't have a chance. Because did you say, oh, Tyler, were you praying in those moments? I wasn't. I was too caught up in everything. I was too caught up in that world and old bad habits to be praying. Tyler, were you reading the word? Not really. Not really at all. Were you talking to God? I thought yes, but knowing now that it was whispering spirits and other things, I wasn't. So it's like, how was I pulled out of this? And you just are led to believe that the loving kindness, the grace, the mercy, the patience, and the perseverance of the Lord, etc., and him always having a hand on you. Like, never ever think for a second that the enemy's got you. That's a lie from the pit of hell. There's not a chance in the world. I was doing like everything wrong, everything you could be doing wrong. And the Lord was still smiling, knowing that his child was being taken care of. You know, the lost sheep was being sought after and been found, right? It's the truest thing. And it was just all a testament that the Lord had shown me that it was done for me to just build my faith and confidence in him. You know, because I didn't do it. There was nothing I did. I couldn't say, oh yeah, I did this, I did that. There's nothing I could have said to you guys right now that this is the step number one. This is step, no, there was none of that. There's nothing. I can take zero credit for pulling myself out of any of this. And I could take hardly any credit from continuing from that process on. It's honestly been just the grace of God, to say the least. Now, having finished being out of that process, feeling like I'm home and clear, I'm still practicing Islam. I'm still doing some prayers. Mind you, it started to ring some bells that I was seeking God through this religion, and also through things like this, we seek protection. But in these moments, what was going on? I still didn't feel protected. I still felt like what I was doing, the prayers, something wasn't adding up.
How did you find Islam in that specific time?
So finding Islam was a part of me just seeking all these other different philosophies. You know, it started with like Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, any other religion. Islam was one of them, Judaism, even a bit of Christianity. It went into Gnosticism, several other different things, you know. And it really started actually looking for enlightenment. It started for enlightenment. I wanted to like seek enlightenment, because what had been written about enlightenment was they play it on the same lines as being like Christ-like. And we'll hear it in the New Age community as like Christ consciousness, and something that, you know, several different beings besides Jesus achieved. Buddha, Maitreya, several different yogis, many of them, and so on and so forth throughout history. And so I was like, yo, like, that's something I want to do. I want to achieve that. If that's something you can achieve, it's like the peak consciousness, the peak mentality, the peak being and character that we can achieve in this life. Yo, why am I spending it on getting a job and doing this? I'll go into the mountains and I'll see God that way. That, to me, it just hit my core. You know, in those times it hit my core, seeking those things. So Islam happened to be one of those things. And at that time, out of everything, I didn't seek it out, and it just so happens I sought it out. And funny enough, this is actually really good. I'm glad you brought that up, because the situations that led me into becoming a Muslim, you would almost, if you were in my shoes, you would think that this was God ordained. The situations that were happening, it was almost like, yo, how did this happen? Yo, that can't be that's a coincidence. Oh, this can't be a coincidence. Yo, there's something going on here. You know, when God and the Spirit starts to move you and things just start to click, I was experiencing something similar to that, where I ended up finding in this remote area. I would go for walks by myself and find this remote area. I found like a Muslim prayer book. And I was like, yo, what are the chances of me finding this here? And they were in scattered pieces. I put them all back together. And the one pizza shop I went to was the owners were from, they were Muslim as well. And I would always go up to them, ask questions. Oh, I found this, blah, blah, blah. And they would just, you know, they wouldn't push, but they would give me just enough answers to pique my curiosity. And I had other situations that sort of led me down the path of Islam. I had a taxi driver, like out of the blue, give me one of their prophets' names. He was like the uncle of Muhammad. He like gave me the name. If I've given time, I could literally find the name for you as well, but it was one of the uncles. And so it was a situation like that, like, oh, what are the chances of this happening? And so when a situation like that happens, it prods you further. It like piques your curiosity. We're like, okay. And so that happened several different times where I thought, well, this has to be the way the Lord's leading me. It's not like I'm even seeking for it. It's seeking me. And so it just progressed until finally, like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And this was after I accepted Christ. 2019. This was after the competition. 2018, accepted Christ. And it's like, there was no care in my mind because my main focus was just getting closer to God. I was avoidant of the truth. It's like I almost didn't even want to hear the truth. And I was just seeking from it in whatever place I could find and whatever seemed real to me at the time. If people say, oh, this is my truth. And the unfortunate part of that is that there is a truth, and your truth, just because it's your truth, doesn't align with the truth. There's a big difference there. And so having come to the final conclusion where I tell you the Lord's grace and mercy and just love and forgiveness was just so strong on me that despite all of this, despite all the religions, despite all the different areas that I went, despite through that long 20-year period of being godless, and despite just being rebellious and running away from him, yet still seeking him at the same time, I still managed in 2020, 2021 to get back into church. And again, was it for something you did? Was there a process? No. There was. It was all God. It was 100% just his mighty hand, his mighty work, and that led into one thing. That led into the next. You start praying more. I start going to church regularly, going every Sundays, starting to fellowship with great and mighty people, and it led me to this place now where I'm actually understanding of what the truth is. I've seen so many different things, been a part of so many different things, been in so many places where people have tried to use, different spells and mantras and this, that, and the third. But the one thing that is true, I could tell you for certain, that works 100% of the time is the name of Jesus. And there's nothing that has compared. There's not even a 1 to 10. There's not even a 1 and a 10. There's just a 10, and everything else is not even on the scale. There's just the Lord. I've tried all those things, the spells, it doesn't compare. His name, experiencing out, receiving deliverance from everything that I've gone through for certain things, yoga being one thing in particular, seeing the spirits rise up, having them manifest out of me, and then witnessing the name of Jesus wipe them right out, through a process, of course, but just his name and how they fear and tremble, and how seeing people get healed at my church, Supernatural Life Center, seeing it just across the world, if you just look for it, just the mighty power of his name. It's not something I found. From the deepest, darkest places of the occult to all the way where I'm at now as a firm believer and knowing that the truth is the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, there's nothing that compares to it. There's nothing. It's not even something that the word needs to tell you. The experience is far too powerful on its own that I pray that everyone has that type of experience, for them to come to a deeper knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the will of God, but also of Jesus Christ and just his mighty power and the ability that he has to change your life, even sometimes when you don't even ask for it or you don't even do anything for it, right? And that's the beauty and the power of how he loves us unconditionally, is that a lot of the times we don't even deserve it, but he gives it to us anyways. And so I think that's most of my testimony for now.
What is one thing you want to tell everyone watching this video that you want them to know?
The truth is the Lord, and the Lord is Jesus. That's the truth. I was, like the title says, I was seeking truth. I sought it, name a place. I sought it there because my whole goal was just being close to God. And I didn't care where it was coming from. I just wanted to be close to him. And it led me to a lot of different places that The nail just wasn't sinking into the wood. It just wasn't. And finally getting into a consistent routine with the Spirit, finally being consistently going to church, fellowshipping, praying, worshiping, etc. It just becomes far too real for you for anything else to be the truth. It is. Not it just has to be it, it is it.